I need to feel you, Jerry. Show me the money. Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Bureau of Freedom. My name is Sasha, and this is episode 2. In this week's episode, I want to talk about what is probably the most important aspect of being free: financial freedom. Unfortunately, we don't live in a post-scarcity, Star Trek-style society. None of us are free to do what we want, to do what makes us and society better. No, the harsh fact of reality is that we have bills to pay. And because of that, we live lives we don't like, doing jobs we hate to pay for things we don't need and don't want. If you read a lot of self-help books, like I have, you'll find that in amongst the vast quantity of nonsense, bullshit, and outright lies, they almost all agree on what freedom actually is. It's having enough, in inverted commas, passive income that you can pay all of your bills, live the lifestyle you want, and still have enough time to do the projects that you want. Whether that's gaming all day, being drunk all day, or if you're truly one of the strange ones, helping people all day. Or all three. Now, there's a reason why I put passive in inverted commas. While truly passive income is fantastic, it's also rare, and in almost all cases it requires a lot of money to start off with. Think of things like investment properties or shares. If you put a shit ton of money into them, then they give you a work-free income in return. That's just not going to work for the newly freed or those of you who are still chained to a desk. Fortunately, we're living in the future, and there are ways of making income that don't come with a huge time investment required. Future episodes will go into some of these ways, but first you'll need to know your numbers. Maths. Everyone hates it, but there are times in your life when you just need to sit down and do the fucking maths. This is one of them. It is impossible to strive for freedom without knowing how to get there and what it actually means. Something else a lot of these self-help books agree on is that working out your finances is the most important and first step you need to take. You need to figure out what you spend, whether you need to spend it, and what income allows you to achieve that spending. I hate maths. I hate accounting. I sat on my ass for years avoiding figuring out my finances. Then, when I decided to quit my job and become a full-time carer for my grandmother and an entrepreneur, I was kicked into action. Why? Because I was shit scared. I had some savings from 20 years of being chained to a desk, but I had no idea how long I had before those savings would run out. How long, in effect, I had to remake myself into a successful entrepreneur. So I made a spreadsheet. In it I put all my expenses, I put in all my lack of income, I told it to tell me the difference, and what it told me changed my life. The net sum of my 20 years as a corporate slave was a bit of savings and an investment property connected to an albatross of a mortgage. The spreadsheet told me that not only did the rent from my investment property cover the payments on the property and the interest on the mortgage, it also covered my frugal life in France, taking care of my grandmother. I was blown away. I was absolutely certain I would have been hemorrhaging money. Why? Because I was just assuming the worst rather than looking at the actual data, which is why this step is the most important. Know what your expenses are, know how much you need to afford them. Use this spreadsheet. So now I'm going to show you the spreadsheet I used and offer it to you for you to use too. Say that 5 times quickly. How much would you expect to pay for such an amazing tool that will change your life? Fuck that shit. I told you in the first episode, I'm not going to shake you down for money. The spreadsheet is free, as will you be if you take the steps towards freedom. Step 1 is use the spreadsheet. So here we are. Welcome to the spreadsheet. Spreadsheet that changed my life and I hope will change yours. So this is the URL up here. Obviously you won't need to type that in, although if you absolutely had to, it's up on the screen. It'll be down in the description below. This will bring you to the template. It's not editable. If it was editable, anyone who used it would put their information, their personal information here, and everyone else would be able to see it. So the first thing you have to do is make sure you're logged into your Google account. You come up to File here and you say Make a Copy. And you give it a name. So I'm going to call this Finances. Save it there, that'll be fine. And it will make a whole copy, new copy for you. So it'll be in your Google Drive, accessible by you and you alone only unless you share it. So this is what it looks like. Quite simple. We have a bunch of expenses and a bunch of income. Now I've tried to keep things as simple as possible. There's 26 or so things here. They're basically just based on my life, and my life is fairly simple. I've decluttered and downsized as much as I can. So you'll no doubt have different expenses, so feel free to go in here and change the name of anything. Perhaps you don't have a car like I have. I don't have a car either. I put it in here for you to use because most people do have a car, but you could change it to something else. So I actually have this line as being CPAP wipes. I sleep with a CPAP machine because I have sleep apnea and I have a cost every month. So you can change these names. They're just names that don't affect anything else. You've then got a column for how often, so these are the expenses and the incomes, and basically how often that expense is paid, or how often that income is received. You then have 4 columns. Now you can rename these however you want. I have 4 columns, and here's what they are. So amount actual is the actual financial accounts that I have today. This is what I'm spending and what I'm getting. I then have worst case. So I mentioned that I'm currently living in the south of France, taking care of my grandmother. She pays for my food and board in return for me taking care of her. So if she were to die, I would then have to start paying for food and board. That's what this column will be. The dream column is basically what I'm living now, sort of living the dream, free, out of the rat race, financially independent as much as I can be. But the dream is basically if I were to pay off my mortgage on my investment property. So if a lump of money landed in my lap, that's what this column would look like. And then finally, this is the sort of imagine everything was absolutely amazing column, just go nuts column. So FIRE is financially independent, retire early. It's an acronym that's out there in the living free community. So basically, as I've written over here, the cost of living the ideal life where you eat out at every meal, rent an amazing apartment, everything like that. So I'm actually going to go through this column with my personal numbers, just to be completely transparent. That's my goal here. Let's get started. So rent. I currently don't have any rent. So that's 0. My grandmother pays for it, even though I do pay for some of the utilities here. Let's just put 0 there just to make life easier. Now, these columns are house and content insurance. I have an investment property. So that costs me, that's a yearly cost of $370. And then council rates, so what I pay to the councils is yearly as well, $1,020. My levies are $3,080 a year. These are all Australian, doesn't really matter what the currency, just they're all basically example numbers anyway. I'll come back to travel in a minute. So these are my income. So the rent for my investment property is $580 a week, so I get that. I do some freelancing data analytics and IT work for a company I used to work for, so they've paid me $2,100 in the last year. My e-commerce, my Amazon business is running, but I'm not ready to take money out of that business, so I'm not going to pay myself an income. So while the business itself is doing okay, it's not actually bringing me personally any money, and it won't until I absolutely need it. I don't have a salary because I quit my job, and any of the little other side hustles would again be in part of the business. But if I were to do if I started, I don't know, working in a bar here or something, then I would put that in there. So basically, what that told me after looking at all of that is that what I was spending actually right now, having quit my job, living in the south of France, taking care of my grandmother, when I first sat down to do this spreadsheet, I basically assumed that this would be negative, that the rent would not cover the rent, and a little bit of stuff that I was doing for freelancing would certainly not cover the expenses that I had for, and lo and behold, they're actually in the green. Blew my mind. And I'm thinking, oh wow, I'm actually making money. These are after all my expenses, I'm actually making some money. So, I mean, that's totally changed my mind. I was, I'm still anxious. I'm still concerned about the future. I'm still scared, but a whole lot less now. Know that just once you see the maths, once you see the numbers, okay, it's not so bad. So I did say I'd go back to travel. I do want to go back to Australia once a year. I have, since I did this exercise, gone back to Australia. And being a rather large guy, I'm fat. I don't, and the flight times from France to Australia are basically 24 hours total in planes. There's no way I can do that in economy. It's horrible on me. It's horrible on the person sitting next to me. So I fly business. I fly cheap business, but I fly business nonetheless. So that is an expense down here of $6,000 a year. So I'm actually in the red. And what that says to me is, in order to be living the life I'm actually living right now, the way I'm living it, I am actually traveling every year. I need to get $4,000 more worth of income as soon as I can. So that's, again, that being red is scary, but it's a massive incentive and a massive goal, something to head toward. Okay, so let's go to worst case now. This is basically I'm living the way I am, frugally, or even more frugally, because nothing else has changed, but my grandmother's died, or whatever. So this basically looks almost exactly the same. Let's just go through it. Now we want to look at worst case. So we've dropped this thing down here to worst case, and what does that tell us? That tells us that in order to live this column, which is completely frugal, having to pay for my own rent and board, I would need to find income in the range of $9,000 a year, $9,000 a year extra than what I'm already getting. Again, scary, but doable. I mean, just to put it in perspective, the job that I gave up, I was earning $110,000 a year before tax. So after tax, whatever that is, 70, 80 grand. Yeah, I'm capable of making that kind of money if I'm willing to sit at a desk 8 hours a day, right? So if I was willing to sit at a desk for an hour a day, surely I could somehow wrangle earning 1/10 of what I used to earn, right? So it just makes this worst case column seem a little bit more doable. Now, for example, imagine I found a side hustle here for $9,000 a year, right? And so that was in this column. This would then be green, right? So adding to my income down here is, I need to find $9,000 a year to cover against the case of it's all not going well. That's not doomsday. That's not, oh my God, we're all going to die. You know, which is, before I did this spreadsheet, pretty much what I was thinking. It's like, I can't do this. I obviously need all this money, blah, blah, blah. It's not true. You live frugally. You live the life you want to. You don't have to be stuck at a desk. At least I don't have to. And I hope you don't have to either. So let's go on to the third column, the dream column. So this is basically exactly what I'm doing right now, but someone, I find a lamp, I rub the side of the lamp, and the genie gives me one wish, and I wish for $450,000 to pay off the mortgage on my investment property. So let's see what that looks like. So let's see what dream looks like. Without any extra income right now, if $450,000 fell on my lap and I paid off my mortgage and I didn't have to pay interest on the mortgage, I would be making, this is basically the life that I know I can live, right? Because I either stay here with my grandmother, and it's not the life I want to live, but if I had to, I could either live here with my grandmother or live with my parents, and they're willing to support me. I would have $12,000 a year that I could basically give to them in rent or whatever, because this is after expenses. This is after I've already factored in everything I've ever wanted to do. So this is just extra. If this was zero, I would be fine, but it's $12,000 a year. And that's without having, let's just assume I do this in the next 5 years. These would have gone up. These would have gone up because I would have been trying to get this up by $4,000. I'd be trying to get this up by $9,000, So if I have gotten up by $9,000, then I'm actually looking at $20,000 a year in just money I don't know what to do with. That's absolutely amazing to me, and it basically tells me that the life that I can live, not maybe the life that I want to live, because that's the next column, the life that I'm privileged to be able to do because I have a grandmother who's willing to take care of my expenses in return for her, and I have elderly parents that would do the same once I'm done here. That's a huge privilege. I'm aware of that. The ability to be able to go back and live with my parents, to take care of them, and in return they'll pay for my food and rent. That's a huge privilege, and that's what this column looks like. And I would be able to easily pay rent and food. What this says to me is, if I can find a way to build a business, to the point where it's worth $450,000 and I just sell it and I exit and say to someone, here, take this business, it's doing great. Here, all I want is 450 grand, not $1 million, not $5 million, $450,000. I can basically be living the dream. I would not have any money worries whatsoever. I would actually be financially independent. All right, so let's go to the dream. That's the dream. This is fire. Financially independent, retire early. Just imagine what life could be if, what does it look like and what do I need to earn to live the ideal life? So let's start with this. Let's just assume that I want to live somewhere that's just amazing, and I'm a single guy. I don't need a one bedroom somewhere, but it could be in, Sydney or Paris or something like that. So let's put in $1,000 rent a week. Now, that's huge for a one bedroom. For me, like, I wouldn't want much, that my apartment that I rent out for $580 is a one bedroom. It's a large one bedroom. It's in an outer, what do you call it? Like an outer inner suburb of Sydney. So yeah, for just under double that, I would easily be able to find a reasonable apartment somewhere in Sydney, or a mansion out in the country somewhere. I don't necessarily need to live somewhere great, but let's just chuck in $1,000 a week. That's way more than I would ever spend. I still think all of this would be the same. I'd still only, how many games can you possibly get through a month, let alone? So that's going to be the same. Let's go 4 books. Let's go 5 books a week, a month. That's more than a book a week. If I'm in one of my reading modes, I'll probably get through a book a week easily. But let's put it in there. This is fire. And let's also go. I'm going to see 4 films a month. That's once a week. It's again not something I'm likely to do, but let's do it anyway. Clothes. Okay. Well, this time I'm going to pay for clothes. I'm going to put $500 a year on clothes. I'm not a clothes guy. I don't wear expensive clothes. I just need some t-shirts, some polo shirts, some jeans, and a pair of sneakers. And the $500, most of that would be the sneakers. So, I'm pretty good. I think that's not too bad. Food and alcohol. So this is the big one. Let's just say I'm spending $50 a day on food and alcohol. There's no way. If I sat down in a restaurant and drank them out of thing, I still probably wouldn't be spending $50 a day. I could, but that's more food than I can possibly handle, and alcohol than I can possibly handle, and I can handle a lot of alcohol. And fuck it, let's go twice. Let's twice go overseas. Why not? It's my life. I'll do whatever I want. So, what does this look like? We switch this over to fire now, and there it is. 70 grand a year is after all of expenses, I need to have 70 grand extra income a year to be able to live that amazing life. Now that's essentially what I was on. And I wasn't even paying anywhere near this kind of stuff for rent and food. I need to find a way in the next, however long I want to give it, 5-10 years, 70 grand a year in passive income. Or I'm not even interested in passive income that lets me just work from wherever I want, however I want. Imagine my e-commerce business was making me 100 grand a year. What would that look like? I'd be well and truly in the green. All right. That's the power of this spreadsheet. Just looking at this number is incredibly liberating. For me, it was because it was green before I had to come back to Australia for during the last year. But even so, I was expecting it to be, 10 grand, minus 10 grand or minus 20 grand a year. And in effect, I would only have a year or two to live off my savings. But what it ends up telling me, even at traveling every year, I've got some time. I've got some time to make up this number. So there it is, guys. That was the magical spreadsheet that changed my view on my future, basically. The link is down below. The link was on the screen if you want to go back and transpose it in. It's also down below in a blog post on bureauoffreedom.com. So thanks very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.